Hi, Deb. Thanks for joining us. Excited to have you here. This is a really cool opportunity for me because we got to meet you and you shared that you had two near-death experiences 12 years apart that really shaped and changed your life. And I've been fascinated with this topic recently. And as we continue to explore it, it's really cool to meet you and to hear this happen to you. Maybe we can start with what was your experience before your first near-death experience and your beliefs about life, death, and did you have kind of these intuitive psychic abilities prior to that first episode?
Okay, loaded question. I was blessed to be born into a Christian Science family. I was third generation Christian Science. So I started my belief systems with mind over matter. And all the family, all my friends were all Christian Scientists until I reached about the age of 8 and we went overseas. My dad was in the Air Force. Christian Science, again, mind over matter. And I grew up with a God that was defined in the book as infinite and divine principle, mind, soul, spirit, life, truth, and love over all and all. That was her definition of God, never anthropomorphized. And since man was made in God's image, man was spiritual, not material. What a great way to start life, right?
And when you say science, you're not talking about like Scientology. This is another.
No, it's not Scientology. It was founded in the 1890s by a woman by the name of Mary Baker Eddy. And it was kind of when that whole kind of new thought movement was just starting to come around. It was couched very much in prose. First of all, being a woman, they could very easily burn her at the stake. And that was the way you spoke about spiritual things in those days. Since then, as Marianne Williamson was to the Course in Miracles, for me, Neil Donald Walsh was to Christian Science. So I've been able to bring the language a little bit more modern and fluent in my own mind. But our whole precept is you live in a lifestyle where you don't have to heal anything. I mean, the healing happens through not getting it in the first place. And then after that, we go to the mind over matter. Let's try to let it get back, restore ourselves to our place of perfection, or as I say now, our original blueprint. So growing up all my life, if I had any kind of a problem, whether it was physical, mental, emotional, the prescription was always take 3 gratitudes and call me in the morning. And one time I smarted off and said, I don't have 3 gratitudes. And my dad gave me a list about a mile long, said, pick 3. And it started out with things like breathed all night while I was sleeping, little things. So I've grown up learning to appreciate everything glass half full. But I had past life memories. And about the age of 8, I went to see the movie with the reincarnation of Peter Proud on a Saturday morning matinee. And I came home and I said, Mom, why didn't you tell me about this? This is what's happening to me. And she kind of muttered under her breath, well, the Christian faith doesn't really believe in those things. And that was my first, I had to start questioning religion at that point. And then shortly thereafter, started finding out in public schools how really different my belief systems were. And of course, it made me a scapegoat. So into the closet I went with my spirituality. It was also discovered throughout the course of my life and career. My first IQ test was when they thought I had cheated on my math SATs because I got a perfect score. And they asked me what college I wanted to go to, name it. And I just thought I had studied harder than anybody else. I didn't think anything of it until I went for a job interview after I got out of college. And part of their interview was another SAT test. And let's just say, call me Sheldon Cooper, except that he likes to talk about it. I went into the closet with it because I realized how unusual I was. So I just kind of went along being normal with everybody else. And then it was discovered that I had an eidetic memory. And that was a bombshell for me because I just thought everybody else was stupid. And I had to relearn how to work with people and how to have different expectations on my team. I was a manager by then. But anyways, just to make a long story short, being born into that kind of a family with an eidetic memory and a very high IQ has allowed me, I think, to take things further maybe than other people can.
What's an eidetic memory? So, I know a photographic memory.
Eidetic is not photographic. Photographic means you can see things. You can look at a page on a book and recite it word for word. Eidetic means you remember things at a detailed level. I can give you detailed memories of when I was 2 years old. I can remember, it's when I need to remember something, it's there in all its detail. I can tell you where I was, what I was doing, what time of day it was, what I was wearing, what you said, what I said. And I can do that for big pieces of my life if I want to. It was great in the job market.
Yeah. I imagine you're
Made me a really good software developer because I remembered where all the lines of code were.
your cloud storage space in your brain is way more gigabytes than any of us.
Well, I don't know if it's the storage space so much as it is the access.
Recall.
You know, I've got a faster read-write drive than other people, I guess. I don't know. But I never, I always thought it was everybody else that was unusual. So, like I said, into the closet I went with all of those things until my first near-death experience. But I was in a very dark night of the soul. And that was illogical for me. I was a glass half full. My life was going great. Everything I was doing I was good at and was working for me. And all of a sudden things started to fall apart, and they fell apart hard, and they fell apart fast. And I lost my faith for a while because I was still under the belief that there was this God fella, even though we don't anthropomorphize, but whatever this intelligent was, it was the arbitrator of what you get. And I was seeing bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people. And I was in the former group. I mean, things were falling apart and there was no reason why. While other people who were, my job was falling apart and my boss was a liar and a cheat. How is that rewarded and I'm punished? I had just split up with my husband of 25 years a month before his mother passed. And we found out that she had been worth quite a bit more money than we thought. We thought she was on, barely making it on Social Security. So a month after our divorce, he inherited $750,000, and I had just bought him out of our share of the house at the peak of the market, and was about to go underwater because, the property values were falling so quickly. So and the kids were, I was having trouble with my kids. Everything just seemed to be going to hell in a handbasket.
During this time or growing up, did you have feelings or seeing psychic, intuitive, telepathic insights to other situations yourself? Did you question that or look into those, or was it just come up and you'd push it aside?
I thought it was normal. I have always had claircognizance, which is the clair that allows you to understand things. You get things not in audible form, not in visual form, not in sensual form. I have all of those, but my strength, especially as a child, was claircognizance. I just knew things. I didn't know how I knew them. I didn't know why I knew them. When I found out my memory was eidetic and my IQ was high, I thought, oh, that's why. I never thought there was anything special about it. I just thought it was the way my brain worked until after my first near-death experience. And I was already pretty well staged for this to happen and kickstart what happened after that.
So you're in a dark place, trouble with your job and your kids and your finances and your house.
Yeah, and
spiritual well-being.
At the time, I was double careering. I had in my life a 35 career year with show horses professionally. That's my eternal occupation, if you will. And then another 35 years, many of those years overlapping in information technology, computer geek. And I was up in the barn. I was by myself at this point. Husband was gone. 3 kids had flown the nest. One had flown the nest. One was in jail and one was not at home. Let's put it that way. Some of the falling apart that was going on. And I was up in the barn cleaning stalls. I've got a 5-stall barn. And I'm telling you what, I lectured God and cussed him out at the speed of angry. I was literally flinging manure at God, saying, what kind of loving parent and what kind of a God are you if you do this? What, you reward him and you punish me? And I was going on and on and on and on. And, this doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. This is why people question if you even exist. And the next day, the horse I had waited my whole life to own, the most magnificent animal I've ever ridden, young, inexperienced, but so talented. And just, we connected from the very beginning. He was my heart and soul. And he was being a little silly, feeling a little fresh, and he tripped and he fell. And no, I have to correct people all the time. I did not fall off my horse. I stayed on until the absolute bitter end. The last thing I remember was him rolling over the top of me. Not onto me, but I was looking at stomach and legs going over me. And I sat. First of all, God said, don't believe me anymore? Here I am. And this is how much I love you. And I felt the only way I can put words to this feeling was when I had my first baby and they put her in my arms for the first time. That overwhelming, unconditional, I've known you all my life and I'll never let anything but good happen to you till my dying day feeling. Only I was not the mother holding the infant. I was the infant being loved that much. And then I got all the questions that I had asked the day before answered, not audibly. It was just a knowing thing. And before I could even think the next question to ask it, the response was coming through, and it was just coming through all that quickly. I'd think it the answer, until it was just like this unfolding in front of me of not only the answers to all my questions, but of all the secrets to the universe. And I was awestruck in the elegant simplicity of the design. And I was just in joy over the divine order of everything. Bliss. That's all you can describe it in, is bliss. That blissful feeling. I thought, oh my God, this is so easy. This is so simple. How do we not know all this? And when I got up off the ground, about the only thing I actually remembered was that I knew, but I could not articulate or put words or thoughts to what I knew. I couldn't explain how I knew that the world was in divine order. I couldn't explain how the universe was so simple. It just was inarticulatable, ineffable, as they say. And that's part of the difficult part of moving between the realms, if you will, is that we don't have language for the experiences that we have on the other side. So everybody who has a near-death experience has to translate it first through their thought and their perceptions, and then into a language. So it's a lot of like and untos. I saw Mom. No, I felt her energy. But now that I'm back here, that energy turns into a visual representation of Mom, because everything in that realm is vibration. I don't know how to explain that to you. All communication is telepathic. You don't have a body, even though you feel like you're seeing, at least when you get back, you feel like you've seen and heard things. But anyways, I just could not put words or even understanding to what I knew. And that became the sole mission of my life from that moment forward, was to figure out what I knew then that put me in that place of bliss so I could live in that place now, here on Earth. Because once you've had a near-death experience, you wonder why you would even come back. Most near-death experiences don't want to. And in fact, there's a large suicide rate or early natural death rate amongst near-death experiencers, because they're like, oh, I'm done with this, do whatever it is I came back to do and get me out of here.
Can you share a little bit about, so the horse rolled on top of you and
over me.
Over you.
Over me. He did not land on me, which is why I'm alive today.
So he floated over you, or
he somersaulted over. He tripped, fell, and basically he somersaulted 17 hands of thoroughbred. And at the last minute, as I saw his muzzle touch the dirt, I knew he wasn't going to recover. And I said, it's time to let go. And I was flung just far enough from him that he kind of somersaulted over the top of me and did not land on me. I did break 3 ribs, and I did break my regulation safety helmet. So it was a pretty substantial hit when I hit the ground. I don't know how long I was out, but the sun was setting when I got to my feet, and it was not close to sunset when I hit the ground. So there was nobody there, no witnesses, but I don't need them. I know where it was.
Sure. So you lost, I guess, would you say, consciousness with the...
No, I was out. I was gone.
For some time?
For some time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Was I dead? There was nobody there to say I was dead, but I was not on Earth anymore.
Sure. And so through this experience, you've gained some insight into this other possibility, portal, world, universe, energy, that you were able to remember the feelings, and obviously translating into words is another challenge, but it sounds like it created hope for you?
It did. Although I came back, I was still in my dark night. Even when you die, you're still the same person you were before. Although it's much easier from that place of, that 30,000 foot view of understanding things in a way we can't hear. A lot of times if you're a grumpy jerk when you die, you come out of that pretty quickly, because you get all the information that changes you. But when I came back, I was still in a dark night, but there was hope. And that's why I said it was my mission to get that feeling back here, because I had lost that feeling and I wanted it back so badly. There was a dichotomy to resolve too. Part of my cussing God out as I was watching the world go to hell in a handbasket. And I just had this sense that we were destined for potentially nuclear war. It's just everything was kind of lining up and looking that way. And I thought, what's wrong with this world? And I saw, as I watched everything in divine order, and sat in heavenly bliss and knew the perfection of the universe. I watched all the events that I was watching happen, I watched them all unfold in a way that I knew this is divine order. It's supposed to happen. It's all good. But it's still, when I got back, it was kind of terrifying to me. It's like, how can, I don't want to say apocalypse, although apocalypse has a different meaning. But it was what I called the only words I remembered. And the first thing I did when I got off the ground, and the first steps of my spiritual journey, was to dust off my Bible after probably decades. And I went straight to the book of Revelations, because the word seven thunders kept going through my head. I thought, what is this seven thunders? And I read about it, and I got to the part where it said, and John heard the seven thunders, and God said, utter them not, I will make them known when it's time. And I said, God, I ain't being your prophet. They don't treat your prophets well here. I said, I'll be your vessel, but not your prophet. And so I have not gone out and told the world the sky is falling. First of all, I knew there was nothing I could do about it. It was going to transpire with or without me. And that began this tickling sensation that, why would God tell me this if I can't share it and can't change anything? And then I thought, well, maybe there's a way to not experience it. And that's been kind of my life journey ever since, is figuring out, what do I need to know to see this in divine order again, so that I can go through whatever we're coming up on gracefully. If I can't do that, I want to be at ground zero when it happens. Just take me and get it over with, especially since I'm not afraid to die.
What year was that first?
2008.
2008. And were you afraid to die before that? Because that's something
That's a great question.
When I turned 40, that's all I thought about, and it consumed me, and it gave me so much anxiety, and I was really scared, and it was just not a good place to be.
No.
Spiritually, for me, just explores when you're unsure and unknown.
Non-denominational. Spiritual, but not
I think you've described
religious.
yourself as more atheist, or...
No, not atheist. That's knowing, and I don't know, so how can I be certain that there's no God? If you don't know, then you really can never be certain. So I'm talking for me personally, not for you or us. But I guess when you're seeking and learning and not sure, I think that's agnostic. Maybe I'm wrong. And learning more about the spirit and the universe and the energy over the last couple of years, and possibilities and telepaths and intuits and people like you seems to have given me a little bit more comfort in the universe.
Well, come on over. I'll give you plenty of comfort.
Hey.
Love it, Dad. Appreciate that. So after that, your next steps were to find out how to feel closer to what you felt in that moment. Am I getting that right?
And you said, you hit the words, I think it was you, Catherine, said you came back with a feeling. And that ended up being, I call it now, my trudar. Because as I was going through my searching through the years, every once in a while, I just have this tingly feeling. There's your clairsentience. I'd feel like I had just heard something I had always known, but I'd never heard it before in my life. Little bells and whistles would start ringing in my head, and I'd say, that was that feeling. That was that feeling. I've got that feeling again. And I learned through the course of the years of getting information after that, when that feeling went off, I knew to pay attention. It was very similar to the way I learned to communicate with my dad, who passed in 2000. And I think I communicate better with him now than I did when he was alive. But as soon as I realized that all those 9/11s I was seeing everywhere, and he died before 9/11, but they will choose something to prove that they're still with you. And when I finally realized that every time I kept seeing 9/11 on cash registers and clocks and anywhere, there'd be a 9/11, and I'd say, finally said, what's going on here? And I started paying attention. I realized that every time I saw that, I'd been thinking of Dad. So one time I said, Dad, is that you? And I was sitting there on my computer, and I had 9/11 came up on the clock, and I said, Dad, is that you? And I slipped in a CD to record something that was supposed to be empty, and up popped a video of my dad. And he's just standing there waving at me. Now, talk about goosebumps, right?
Yes.
And after that, I started to pay attention, and we've got a system of, and this will come in important when we get to my second near-death experience, but he's always around, flashing me 11 saying, hi, I'm here, I'm paying attention, or the 11s have different meanings. I'm getting off on a tangent here. Point being, when you start to pay attention to these things, it's like any muscle, the more you use it, the better you get with it. Mm-hmm. And I used that feeling I had that I could recognize to navigate my way through 15 years of looking for those answers and being able to put words to what I felt and knew there. And that was always my guiding feeling and still is to this day. You know, I know when I'm hearing a truth. I know when I'm supposed to pay attention. I know when Spirit's talking to me. I know when this was not my thoughts, but thoughts coming from higher consciousness, if you will. I started, like I said, in Revelations with the seven thunders and moved from that to probably, well, I thought the sky was falling. I had to go and tell the king. And so I started looking at the prophecies and found out that, you know, everybody else already knew 2012 was coming and that was the big date. So I started looking into all of that. And I spent a week with Neil Donald Walsh, who, as I said, was for me my first mentor. And he was the one who unlocked the language of Christian Science in a way that took me just way beyond where I had been. My heart was singing, and boy, didn't life start to turn around. Law of attraction. And I'll get to this. I'm getting ahead of myself. But I look back now and I can see why everything happened the way it happened. And I can see how things changed after they happened and why good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. It's all very logical now. And so now I have great faith in God again. But yeah, so Neil Donald Walsh, Stone and I got into past life regression, life between life regression, QHHT, Dolores Cannon's, and I really connected with the Pleiadian channels and recognized myself at that point as a Pleiadian starseed. I understood why I was so different. I understood why I was born with the differences I had. They're an advanced civilization. And let me tell you something, everybody who's waiting for spaceships and little green men, give it up. They're already here. They have incarnated into human bodies. And I believe I'm one of them. You know, you want to see an ET, here I am. But I look just like everybody else.
I've been told by another person in California that we worked with that I have that same frequency, and the same part of me is with the Pleiadians.
Well, it makes sense. Getting ahead of myself again, but it makes sense that the last world age that evolved into the new dimension that they say we're going to, which I see us going to, we're on our way, we're almost there, was Atlantis. Now, at that time, all of the ley lines and pyramids and everything else pointed towards Sirius, which was, if you will, the beings that basically started that world age. So Sirius, in essence, was their father, and they pointed everything to Sirius for that connection. The Pleiadians that ascended went on to become, well, the Atlanteans that ascended went on to become Pleiadians. And so for the next world age that is in the process of being born, we're getting way ahead of ourselves here, but for the next world age that's in the process of being born, Pleiades is both our brother and our father. Okay? For those of us here now in the third dimension, the Atlanteans that did not perish at that time went on to reseed the earth. And so in essence, Pleiadians were our fathers, if you will. Earth being our mother, the Pleiadian being our father, basically reseeded the earth. But once we make this ascension, we'll be side by side with Pleiades, and Pleiades will be in essence, our brother, because we'll be at an equal level then. So a little incest there, but get over it. These things can happen in that realm. So anyways, where were we before I got way ahead of myself? Yeah, so Pleiadian starseeds. Ever read Barbara Marciniak?
I have not.
You might. She's a Pleiadian channel. You might really relate with her. And so anyways, my clairs were coming online. I was getting messages for people from deceased loved ones. I was getting evidential results with it. And so I started to have a little bit more confidence and understood things a little more and paid attention to them a little more. And things just kind of started to blossom in the area of my clairs coming online, my psychic abilities coming online, my mediumship abilities coming online, and channeling, which I always just thought was, where'd that great idea come from? I just thought it was my own ideas in my own head at the right time. And it wasn't until much later that I started actually recognizing these experiences as channeling. But I did start to listen to the channels, and it made sense to me because really we're all always channeling. We are all channels, and we're always channeling. The thoughts that come to you from your higher self, the part of you that is eternally resident in the spiritual realm, eternally resident. It doesn't go away when you come here. It's still there. You're like a marionette on a string. It's guiding you, loving you, experiencing your experiences, living through you. And your thoughts are the channeling of that higher being. That higher being is outside of space-time. It's not of the material realm. You have the entire realm of consciousness that you can receive if you want to, and if you know how. And so it's just a matter of taking the box off around yourself and saying, okay, give me something else. And something else comes in and you realize it's coming from somewhere else.
I love that box
channel. Yeah, you got to take the box off. We draw the boxes around ourselves.
To be open to accepting the message, unblocking those blockages.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so easy to unlock once you understand the law of attraction. So 2012, everybody said, so disappointed because nothing happened. And I looked at my 2012 and the 2012 of a lot of people around me. I went through a pole shift. I went from being single, about to lose the house. Life was miserable, and I never wanted to remarry again. My most recent husband, father of my children, 25 years, was an alcoholic, and I was done with men. I just wasn't raising another baby. Sorry. Until the universe said otherwise. And I was a hospice volunteer. I just started that almost as soon as I got off the ground. I had to share this with people to alleviate their fear of dying, because that's a big fear, to alleviate people's grief. But you don't do that in hospice. Hospice is very clinical. So when 2020 came around and you couldn't, everybody was quarantined, I kind of never picked it back up again. Still did it, but didn't pick it back up again. But one of my hospice patients said something that prompted me to put myself up on a dating site, and my husband friended me before I had finished my profile. And I thought, I'm just, and he had just lost his wife a few months before. And I thought, oh, I get it. I'm supposed to help him through his grief. Dear Lord, I did not sign up for what I ended up getting, which was another husband. And that's, of course, changed my life. And it kept me from going bankrupt, and the house is paid off now, and life is just great. Before my first near-death experience, I sat on my front porch and I told somebody, I said, if there's a hell, surely there's a hell, because I'm in it. This is hell, and I'm in it. And now I sit on that same front porch in basically the same body, not too different of circumstances. Anybody else looking in would say, what has changed? Because I sit there now and I say, surely if there's a heaven, it's here, because I'm in it. And in fact, when I came back from my second near-death experience, or you might say my third, it was an experience after that. I won't call it near-death, but it's an experience I've never come back from. And I sometimes wonder if I did actually die and I'm in heaven now, because death really is that easy. It's like waking up from a dream. You wake up, you have that moment of lucidity where things are a little discombobulated, and you're thinking about the dream and what did this mean? What did that mean? It's a little confusing. But then once you're fully awake, it's like, I'm awake now, back into the living room. I go back to the kitchen, doing your normal day-to-day things that you do in that realm, as if nothing ever happened. It's just a continuation of the day before in that life. And you're with the same people. So you don't notice that things have changed that much at first. And a lot of people don't realize they're dead for quite a while. You listen to some near-death experiences, and there's a while before they realize they're dead. And they're wandering around hospitals and taking out-of-body journeys to visit their kids and say goodbye. But, everything changed for me in 2012. And that also happened to be the year that I discovered the law of attraction, Esther Hicks's work, and Abraham. And you got to tell your community, run, don't walk, to get her books. My favorite is Ask and It Is Given, but she's got a whole series of them. Ask and It Is Given is wonderful because it gives you a lot of exercises in the back to actually start your journey, make law of attraction work for you. And I discovered it, but I didn't, well, it did. It was probably a couple years later. I was listening to it, and start every day with a 15-minute YouTube of Abraham. I always let the universe pick the first one, and then the second one I listen to in the morning will be one of my choosing, one of my favorites or something. But oh man, did my TrueDar go off? I mean, the sirens in my head. This is it. This is it. This is it. This is what I knew. This is what I knew. And the beauty of it is, it takes the arbitrator out of what happens. There's no judge judging you, deciding what you deserve and what you don't deserve. You are attracting it with your own vibration. And once I got the handle on that, everything that had happened to me before made sense. The fact that good things were happening to bad people made sense because they were happy. They may be bad, but they were happy. So good was coming to them. And once I understood law of attraction, and it's all vibration, and my left brain side could then explain it. Because the truth is, this energy, we're getting into the secrets of the universe, so I'll keep this brief. But the truth is, there are two forms of energy in this universe. One of them is electromagnetic. But with the separation of church and state and the materialistic paradigm taking consciousness out of every experiment they do, they've written the second form of energy out of the equation. And so we're only working with half our power, and not even half, because that other form of energy, the chi, the prana, I call it the energy of consciousness, life force energy. It's known by so many different names. The energy that Reiki healers work with. It's not electromagnetic. Well, some of it's electromagnetic, but they're really working with the other energy form, which is the energy of consciousness, and it is primal to everything. If science doesn't start using it in their studies, no wonder we're getting not so good results. No wonder medicine's only 50-50.
The law of attraction, law of attraction and noticing the 11s for your dad, you're actively seeking those and you're noticing them and they're coming more to you. And maybe if you weren't looking for them, you wouldn't notice them.
Exactly. My husband had a video of that his dad took when he drove home from the hospital after his wife had passed. And he's standing there talking to his dad, and there's this butterfly that just won't leave him. It's flying, it's landing on his shoulder, it's landing on his head. He's trying to shoo it away. It's a big old yellow monarch butterfly. And he says, "Do you suppose that meant something?" And I'm like, "Oh my God." You don't know to look for these things, you don't see them, so you don't get the evidence back again. Once you start practicing law of attraction and you start looking for those little synchronicities that say, spirit just answered, spirit just answered, spirit just answered, spirit just answered, but you have to look on a vibrational level. You know, you might do one thing that's at a certain vibration and completely unrelated to that thing, something of a similar vibration might happen. Example, I was writing an email. I said something kind of snarky, and I said to myself, I'm going to have to take that out. And I said, I'll do it after I get another cup of coffee. Stood up, spilled my coffee all over my computer. I said, that was fast.
But from my understanding, you have to already assume that it's happening and not that
Yes.
you want it to happen, or you can't have a not like, I don't want this to happen, because they just hear it as it's going to
That's
happen.
what,
right?
That's consciousness being primordial. Mm-hmm. That's consciousness being at the center of creation, as it has been all along. Your consciousness creating a reality. We'll get to that. Secrets of the universe. You're making me jump ahead here.
Do we want to get into the second, which is 12 years later? So after 2008, it was 2020?
Yeah, 2020 was the second. Before that happened, I got to tell you a couple things. Please. First thing was, that's when I started channeling. And I knew I was channeling because I was getting these blocks of thought that were just so profound. Things I had never thought of before, things I didn't have a context to come up with, the things that were coming into my head. And I started, after a while, I started to kind of recognize a familiarity when these things would come in. It's like, oh, this is kind of a continuation of the one before. It sounds and feels the same as the one before, when this happened to me last week, type of thing. So finally, I was walking on the C&O Canal, which I did every day. And of course, that would be a great place for spirit to come to me, right? Out in nature. I was walking on the canal, and I felt it come in, and I said, okay, who are you? What is your relationship to me? And is there a name I can call you? And it said to me, I am your collective higher self, singular. You are the cells of my body, and I am in the process of my birth. Your mother looks like this, and I got a picture of my mother. My mother is the sun, is the solar system, your system of Sol, it said. My mother is your system of Sol. Her heart is your sun. Her womb is your earth. You are the cells of my body, and I am in the process of my birth. There's the birth of your fifth dimensional being, okay? Whole new being, whole new level of existence, whole new level of consciousness. And it said, so coming from your system of Sol, my surname would be Mankind, but you can call me Hugh. Hugh Mankind is my name. I'm like, whoa, I just about fainted, right? And Hugh said, it is I who has diabetes of my Americas. It is I who have a cancerous growth in my Middle East. And I limp because I have a wounded knee. And I mean, you talk about things unlocking. It put so much. Suddenly, I was back up at 30,000 feet. And from that view, I could see the divine order. Hypothetically, But in my second/third near-death experience, because it was kind of between the two, evolved between the two. But the third experience was when I actually sat in that place. Whereas I was at that 30,000-foot place, seeing the world as it's the world's consciousness might see it, not the Earth's consciousness, but the world, complete with all of its sentient beings and all of the intelligence combined into one mind. And behold, it was very good. And that was the final move to my bliss. 30,000-foot view is beautiful. And once you get there, it's kind of hard to come back here and look at it in its mundaneness anymore. You know, it's like having a whole different perspective. Kind of like when it gave me a whole new understanding of astrology. All of a sudden I understood, if our solar system is a being, if our Earth is a being, well, of course, that's how the planets and the signs all work. They're portals for this other type of, for this conscious energy. It's not the electromagnetic energy, except the sun and the moon, which do affect us with their electromagnetic energy. But all the other planets are portals for this other type of energy to come in and work with us. And so that made a lot of sense of a lot of things. Reiki also, that's what Reiki, and, that's the Reiki energy they're talking about working with. I don't have to go hook myself up to a battery and put my hands under people to do Reiki. It's not electromagnetic. It's the consciousness energy, the other type of energy. Last but not least, before my near-death experience, something that frequently happens to people who are looking for that bliss again is they try to find it in other ways. And I had always known that I had the alcohol.
Like plant medicine or other?
I had always known that there was an alcoholic in my genes somewhere. And after 25 years of being married to one and having to raise 3 kids, I had managed to not exhibit full-blown alcoholism. I was managing it. It was really managing me. But, my life was okay, even though I drank. Well, in those years between the 2 experiences, the alcohol took a hold. It got its hooks in me, and I was terrified. I mean, it had controlled me. And I was desperate. I mean, I was sure that it was going to kill me because of how bad it had gotten. And I was also sure that I could never be happy again with it or without it. And one afternoon, I dropped to my knees on the floor and I said, God, either cure me or take me, because I'm either going to kill myself with this or I'll never be happy again for the rest of my life. So let's just get this done. And that night, I woke up with a problem that had been going on for decades. I'd been in the emergency room 4 times with it, and it was never diagnosed as gallstones. But I started throwing up bile. I knew what it was. We went to the emergency room. I said, I think I've got a gallstone. And they checked me out. They said, honey, you are in acute pancreatitis. We've got to ship you off to this other hospital, and you've got a complete blockage of your bile duct. And we need a specialist to get this out. So I said, okay, well, how about Innova? Because it was close to my house. Well, the next thing you know, I'm riding in the ambulance, facing backwards, watching the street signs go by. And I said, where are we going? And they said, Fairfax. And I said, why Fairfax? I wanted to go to Loudon. It's only 30 minutes from my home. Fairfax is an hour and a half. I looked up at the clock on the back of the ambulance. And it was like 1:27 in the afternoon, some obscure time, 9:11. I said, oh, Daddy, you're with me, aren't you? Well, it turned out the clock was broken. It said 9:11 all the way to the damn hospital. Little did I know what he was actually telling me. I thought it just meant I've got this. And so I kind of relaxed and said, okay, everything's in divine order. Well, he took me to Innova for a reason. First of all, they had to stabilize me. It took them 3 days to get me stable enough to get me into an endoscopic surgeon to unblock the bile duct, which they did. Of course, that's required anesthesia. And then the next day, they were going to take out the gallbladder. Laparoscopic. Normally, it's outpatient surgery, but because of my conditions, they were going to keep me for a couple days. Well, after I came out of the anesthesia from having my bile duct unblocked, that night, I sat on the river, that proverbial misty river between life and death, with my dad in a rowboat. And he was just sitting there. There were no words. Again, this is all, everything that goes on that side is telepathic. So he wasn't talking to me, but he was just sitting there with the oars crossed across his lap, waiting for me to decide which shore I wanted to be dropped off on. I was literally making the choice whether to live or die. Being the analytical person that I am, I had a whiteboard on each side of the river. Pros, cons, pros, cons. So I woke up the next morning ready to go bright and early into surgery. They came to get me. I was having a panic attack. I mean, I knew something big was up. And even though I'm cool as a cucumber and I'm not afraid of death, you asked about that. I wasn't from the beginning because I knew I was in an eternal being, but having the experience really, I mean, I was not only not afraid of it, couldn't wait. I want to go back there. But even in spite of all that, I was having a panic attack and my blood pressure soared, and they had to spend an hour trying to get my blood pressure down so that I could go into surgery. So that delayed it. And then it took the leading surgeon of liver, pancreas, and gallbladder surgery in the country, who happened to be at the SAR Institute, heading it up across the street from the wrong hospital. They got him over there. It took him and four surgeons, 5 hours to get my gallbladder out, because it had been such a problem for such a long time, and 24 staples to close just the outside of me. And they lost me on the table. They didn't say that, but what they said when I first came out of the anesthesia and everything was all muddled and the doctors were there, said, "Boy, you gave us a real scare." And I said, "I know, I died, didn't I?" And they all kind of went out of the room. But I sat on the rowboat with Dad again. Now, mind you, I remembered the first time sitting on the rowboat with Dad. So I know they weren't the same situation, remembered 3 times. So when it happened during my surgery, I remember one thing that was kind of evidential that happened. I said, I was weighing the pros and cons. I said, well, my kids will be fine, but they've got teenage I've got granddaughters that are coming up on teenage age. And if they're anything like their moms are going to need some help. So I said, maybe I should stick around and help my grandkids, or help my kids with my grandkids. And I remember Dad saying, and this almost sounded like words, but it was very clear to me, well, then you're putting that on the wrong side, because you can actually be of more help from the other side, because they'll listen to you better if you put your thoughts in their heads. When I remembered that after I got out, I was like, oh my God, that really was Dad, because that thought's never crossed my mind. It was revolutionary to me that I could be of more help from the other side. Okay. Well, I wasn't conscious long after I came out of the amnesia, and once again, round 3 on the river with my dad. And this time I'm looking at the whiteboards and I said, Dad, I am not going back with this problem, because I'll be right back here if I do. And I would prefer my death certificate to read complications from surgery than alcohol poisoning. And that must have been all he needed, because I was back. I was released from the hospital about 4 days later, a full week before they thought I would. I healed so quickly. But I never, ever again even thought about having another drink.
That was it.
Never wanted it, never thought about it. And every day I was happier and happier and happier that I wasn't drinking. And then law of attraction really started working in my life. So anyways, that's kind of the story of my second near-death experience. Again, more expansion of clairs. I'm channeling more and more. And about a month, maybe 2 after the second experience, Hugh came to me and said, start writing. And I said, I've tried to write this and all that comes out is gobbledygook. I said, I've tried to tell people and I just can't seem to get the words together. I said, you're going to have to write this. I'll just sit down and start typing. And in 3 days, 100-page manuscript that was full of even newer secrets of the universe was written. I had to keep stopping and reading what I just wrote. I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. And so basically channeled writing. That and 2 other books are sitting on a computer waiting for me to decide waiting for Spirit to decide the time is right, because I have told Spirit in no uncertain terms, I will be your vessel, but I am not going to be your prophet. You want this to happen, you make it happen. So I'm leaving it all up to the divine, which is why my mentoring, you won't find that I have a web page, and I don't have, I'm on one social media platform. I do most of my work word of mouth, because I really want it to be that pure. And you see a lot of channels and a lot of psychics who, when they're having to do it on demand, you sometimes wonder if they aren't kind of, fumbling because it's not coming to them right now. I won't do that. If I get a message, I'll give it to you. But I'm not one of these people that you can come to me for to contact your deceased loved one, because I don't know if I will or not. And I'm not going to take a chance that anything will interfere with that. I do not charge for my services, because the fastest way to put your ego into something is to turn it into a vocation. And I don't want the ego in there. I don't want any need in there. And because when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, so will the student. So I let them find me. And it's the same way with the books and anything else I do. I'll kind of test the waters a little bit. And if I send it to a few agents, there's no interest, I say, okay, it's not the right time yet. So we'll wait and see when that happens. But so anyways.
Am I the student? We found you, Deb.
Yeah, you did, didn't you?
Not by chance, right?
Maybe somebody from Gaia will hear this podcast and invite me on Gaia, and Hay House
There
will
you go.
hear that I've got 3 books written, who knows what'll happen from this. And I'm willing, but I'm not chasing it down. Plus, I'm retired now. I've had 2 careers in my life. I'm now a professional juried artist, and I love retirement. So I'm kind of at the point where I said, after Hugh wrote the book, I said, okay, I'll do a few things with it, but, you're going to have to let me know when it's time, and you're going to have to send the contacts to me, because I'm not doing anything that requires work anymore. Only things that bring me joy. And that kind of stuff is way too much like work. So anyways, I've got a lot going on. And so I don't try to go out and make this business. If you're interested, if your people out there are interested, I'm on Facebook under Deborah Maurer. We have a Facebook group called Spiritually Speaking that you can join, because we're taking a break this year, but usually we have 2 meetup groups a month. SedonaVilleInfo@gmail.com. You can reach me. And if you want my phone number, Brian has it. If he vets you first and says you should have it, he'll give it to you. I've given him permission.
Wow, that's a.
And if it's Hay House, definitely.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about people who haven't had this experience, or maybe are closed off, or just seeing it as maybe you were dreaming,
Poor
or
dear, you bumped your head.
you have a concussion, or there's science says you release these chemicals when you're dying, and whatever. What do you say to that? And I'm not trying to.
No, I don't.
You're not going to convince anybody either way, right? They're closed off, and maybe
Right.
they're not open to it. But
There have been so many studies done, particularly Pim van Lommel did some studies. He was a cardiologist who started to notice near-death experiences. And so he started studying near-death experiences and found that about 20%, and these are, clinically heart-stopped, resuscitated patients. So they were clinically pronounced dead. And he found that about 20% of those patients could recall the experience, recalled some experience. First, and then PMA Jotwater started to put together the stats on what people were reporting. And there's like 97% consistency in what the near-death patient goes through. Some people come back with evidential, and I've come back with evidential. The things that I saw going on in this apocalyptic spell in my first near-death experience are happening today, and I predicted them. So when you get this kind of evidential feedback, you start to, but Pim was getting it from, it didn't matter what religion they were, whether they believed in God or not, whether they were educated or not, whether they were old or not, how long they were gone, whether they were getting drugs or not at the time. He studied it from every possibility and said there is no commonality. So patients that were dead for a long time, patients that were deprived of oxygen, patients that were on oxygen and not deprived, didn't make a difference. And I really believe that everybody has this experience, because the death experience it's really ingenious. It's part of the ingenious design of the universe. People should be embracing it. It really is what makes it all work, really. But, I think a lot of people are blown away by it, or they just don't remember it. The recall of it may or may not happen. And then you've got the doctors who will tell you, well, it was this, that, and the other thing. And then, not too long ago, you said this kind of thing, they put you in an institution on heavy meds because you were nuts. So I think a lot of people who have had them have not talked about them, or have been talked out of them. And it really wasn't until Raymond Moody came along and wrote Life After Life and coined the phrase near-death experience, that this has come out more and more in the open. And this is the importance of organizations like the International Association of Near-Death Studies, NDEs, where these people can come together and talk about and share their experiences. But yeah, they're becoming more and more commonplace. People have had them, or say, oh, that's what I had, or that's what happened to me. That happened to me too. You can't, and God is so, like I said, it's like waking up from a dream. You were only dreaming. You can't tell me that this is my reality. This is my dream. My reality will be there when I die. And you can't tell me otherwise. There's just nothing you can do to tell me otherwise. I tell you what, though, it's a very, very sacred experience. And the minute somebody rolls their eyes at me or says, oh, poor dear, you bumped your head, I'm done. I'm done. I've excused myself from the room. It's like, nope, not that one. But there are a lot of people who are interested in hearing about it, and them I'll talk to all day long, like you.
And even like scientists or doctors, they have one tool or one dimension they can use to explain something. And if they're not open or have access or to the consciousness, how can you explain
consciousness? Does not factor into today's science at all. And yet it is the predominant part of the equation, really. We'll talk about that when we get into the secrets of the universe if we make it.
Secrets to the universe. Tell us 3 takeaways from your experience, or what do you recommend? You sound like you have some clarity of what our purpose is, why we are here, what we are doing.
Absolutely.
What is that? Or and maybe 3 takeaways from this process you've gone through in the last 20 years.
Well, and embedded within them are the secrets of the universe. So if we get time, I'll expound on them. But just for now, what I would like everybody to know, my dad used to say, an error at the premise means an error at the conclusion every time. And we have started our lives, we have been living our lives with some really fundamental errors at the premise. One of them being that there's only one form of energy, electromagnetic. That cannot possibly be true. There are 2 forms of energy, and we know this because everything, it's the first duality. Everything is either matter or not matter. Scientists call it antimatter, dark space, whatever they call it. I call it consciousness because it's that which is not of the physical universe. It's either the physical universe or the spiritual universe. It's either material universe or not. And we all know that the material universe is less than 1% of what exists. So consciousness, the other 99%, don't you think that's what we ought to be studying?
Yeah.
Or we ought to at least factor in that 99% to the 1% that we are studying? So everything is either matter, the material universe, which we now know is nothing but photons, vibrating photons, period. Energy, electromagnetic energy. But spirit vibrates too. It's what I call the energy of consciousness is the intention of attention. Focus and observation is what coalesce the photons into matter. And it is the form of energy. Consciousness rides the same waves that electromagnetic energy rides. They're strung together like a double helix. Imagine that, just like our DNA. 2 strands of energy in there. Not just the photons and the electromagnetic, but the consciousness too. Every atom in this universe has enough consciousness within it to make that atom spin. Every molecule in the universe has enough consciousness in it to hold the molecules, the atoms together, and to give them the isness of whatever that new element is. All the way up to the universe itself, which has consciousness running all through it. It puts the all in all. Consciousness is in absolutely everything. Is it self-aware? No, the rock is not self-aware. And this is where we get into the dimensions, if you will, of evolution itself, which as above, so below, so greatly mirror our own chakra system. And you'll see that if I get to the secrets. But first of all, so there's 2 forms of energy and consciousness is one of them. And when you realize that, boy, law of attraction really kicks in and shows you how your thoughts are attracting your reality and coalescing them into your experience as if they were physical objects. And I just keep thinking, if we could put spirituality back into science, God, what powerful healers and creators we could be. When we do that, we will be an unstoppable species. So hopefully that's coming. And it does seem to be. Of course, now quantum physics is proving this out. They have the observer effect. Now, the fact that the photon behaves as a wave when it's not observed and as a particle when it is, it just tells you that focus is bringing this other energy form into formation. First, it formed the gases and the liquids that form the stars, and then it formed the solids that form our planet. And that's your first chakra of evolution. You've got the material universe. You've got the elements and the atoms. Second chakra of evolution happens when you introduce life to the mix. And so then there was life upon the earth, the second day of creation, life upon the earth. And that's when all of the molecules come together and form something greater than themselves. And the consciousness that occupies that space that is greater than the sum of the parts. So you get several molecules pulling together. The consciousness that occupies that is now self-aware. And that's what we call the 3rd dimension of evolution, where the universe, the consciousness that's in everything starts to become aware of itself. So as a self-aware species, that's basically every mammal on the planet, right? Yep. Self-aware. Plant forms 2nd dimension. They live, they have life. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. 2nd dimension, life is introduced. Life defined as respiration. It can respirate, it can replicate, and it can metabolize. Those 3 things constitute life in a cell. Then the cells all come together, form things like organisms and livers and hearts and things like that, greater than the sum of its parts with an intelligence that is outside of the individual cells. that make it up, that comprise it. So there's an intelligence there that says all these cells are liver cells, and we have a purpose and a function, and this is what it is. So there's an ego kind of wrapped around, isness wrapped around that collection of things. Now you take all the organs in the body, you bring them all together with a neural network, the consciousness that forms around that thing that is greater than the sum of its parts is what you know as your little ego. We're like nesting dolls. Take that out a step, okay? Take all of us as the cells of Hugh's body, put this ego around us all because we are a collection. We have communities. We are life itself. We respirate, we replicate, we have communities and form and function. You put that all together, put an ego around it that says, I am this whole thing, and you have Hugh. Jump up a couple more nesting dolls, and pretty soon you're at the edge of the universe with the one consciousness who is looking at all of this and saying, this is me. This is all me. My friends, consciousness is one field. There's only one of us here. That's it for a minute. Now, when you look at the, pardon my expression, asshole next to you, the jerk who did this, the dummy who did that, the mean person who did this, you have to wonder, but I can teach you that too. So first of all, two forms of energy, not one. And consciousness is primal. Consciousness gives rise to matter, not the other way around. Second question, why are we here? The one everybody's waiting for. What's the meaning of life? And I asked this question when I was cussing God out during my first near-death experience. I said, God, what's in this for you? Why even bother? What do you want out of this? Why do you care if I get better? Why do you care if any of us are good or bad? Why do you care if the universe, I was still asking this question because I'm still asking, why do you care if the universe evolves? And this really came to me from Hugh, who basically articulated all the secrets of the universe for me that I hadn't been able to articulate myself. And Hugh said, it's called involution through evolution. You are not here to get out of the mortal realm. You're here to bring the divine into it. The whole goal is to get here. The whole goal is for the infinite spirit to be able to walk in a body and experience its creation from within. And I said, oh, relief. And it said, you are the leading edge of evolution. You're the ones here, feet on the ground, boots on the ground, pushing the package of evolution, preparing the way for the Lord. And when you're done, there will be a material universe that God can step into and experience from within. And it said, consider the angels. Angels generally do not incarnate. Rarely do they incarnate, never have. When you make contact with a deceased loved one, that's somebody who's going through the reincarnation cycle, which, by the way, is just a given. Don't even give me this, one-shot thing. You get one life. You get eternal lives if you want them. And it's up to you whether you're ready to go back or not and where you're going to go. But reincarnation is the name of the game. But everybody thinks, we're here because we're flawed and we're trying to learn something. We're not as good as, so we're trying to get better. We're trying to become as wise and loving as God. No, we're here trying to get that to happen in the mortal realm so that God can come in, not us get out. And because we're that leading edge, because we're out there pushing the package, we've got all the hosts of heaven behind us. They're cheering us on and congratulating us. When you die, there's a reception for you. Man, what a brave soul. And look what you did. And you've taken it so far. And this is wonderful. We're getting closer and closer and closer. If you were an angel, if you were God, would you come to this world in this condition yet? No, thank you. So, we're evolving spirit into the material realm until they really come back together as one. And it reminds me of the idea of God experience. First of all, God experiencing itself. If you've never seen yourself in a mirror, you've never heard your own voice. I keep thinking of Helen Keller. Must have been like what? And that's when you really think about what consciousness really is. No eyes, no ears, no ability to talk, and yet she's trying to function in a mortal realm with just pure consciousness, pretty much. God is coming in here with us. We're channeling spirit in involution through evolution. And the more we grow, the more spirit comes in, kind of like opening up a pipe and turning the valve and opening it more and more and more. And pretty soon it's gushing in. But also because God wants to have the experiences. It has created this beautiful thing. Now it wants to enjoy it. And it reminds me of the movie, Robin Williams movie, What Dreams May Come. Do you remember it?
Mm-hmm.
When he dies and when he first gets up in his afterlife, he's in the middle of this painting that his wife, who was an artist, had painted that was supposed to be their dream home. And it was like this paradise location and this beautiful crystalline villa on a mountaintop in the middle of a lake. You know, it was just a gorgeous place. But the paint's still wet and he's standing in the middle of this wet paint, right? God came to the earth right now. He'd be standing in the middle of wet paint.
Yeah.
We're here to let it finish drying so that God can come in and not get his feet wet, if you will. So lesson number 2, you are not damaged. You're not here to get out. You're not here to be punished. You are the praise of the heavens. Live your life that way, friend.
Wow.
Yeah. What if we taught our children that from day one? Third, your
How
success is
powerful.
inevitable.
Sorry, Deb. How
Yeah.
powerful. What a perspective. What a paradigm shift in the thinking. You are.
And can you imagine the generations that would be, can you imagine what the world would be if one generation was raised with this understanding instead of the one that we've been raised for so many eons with, that we're being punished, you know?
Yeah, you're a sinner, you're imperfect, you're this, you're that. What?
And you're going to die and go to hell forever. Bullshit. Sorry. I keep forgetting we're being recorded.
It's all right.
But finally, and probably the best thing is, you can't fail. You cannot fail because you're out here doing something that's never been done before. So even if you get it wrong, how do you know? You know, I mean, every inventor has gotten it wrong a few thousand times before they figure out what's right and how to make it work. So even out here trying and getting it wrong, it's okay because there ain't nobody in heaven that can do it. That's why you're here trying it, getting better at, trying to get better at. Meanwhile, pure consciousness, spirit, your higher self, and all the hosts of heaven are doing everything they can to back you up with what you say needs to happen in this world. But it's all done through vibration. It is not done through words, done through vibration in your heart, which is a combination of your feelings, your emotions, and your beliefs. And that's how law of attraction is causing you to bring in what you're bringing in to this dimension. And once you know that, can't you be a much better creator? I mean, we're doing it so sloppy now because we don't even know that it's working in the background. I remember one time a friend of mine was complaining about something, and my friend said, you know, you really shouldn't be talking that way. We could textualize it this way and see it this way. And I said, oh, shut up. I just want to have a pity party. It's like gravity. You can't do that, you know? I mean, now when I do it, which I still do want to just be mad for a little while, you know, or feel sorry for myself or something. But at least I know I got to get off it quick. I mean, I got to get off it real quick, turn it around, recontextualize it. I've got 17 before momentum starts adding to it. I've got 68 before it's starting to attract more like it, if you will. So I'm always like, I'm really mad at you, and I've got 17 seconds to tell you why. But we can't get it wrong because nobody else has ever done it before. Nobody knows what's right until we hit right. Yep. You've got eternity to do it. You're an infinite, eternal being. And because you're never going to be finished, there's never a point where you can say, I failed, because there's always another go at it. And we're supposed to be enjoying ourselves through this experience. It was meant to be fun. It's like saying, oh, I'm going to go on a trip and I'm going to do these things, and then saying, but I'm having such a miserable time. I wish I didn't have to go, you know? No, go and have a good time. You know, Abraham says, and we hear these things, you know, happiness is an inside job. Suffering is optional. When you learn law of attraction techniques, you can see things that might have torn you up before, but now you can see them, look at them, and not suffer with them. Abraham says, all anybody wants is to, at the end, is to be able to say, I lived a successful life. And really what they mean by a successful life is they want to be able to say, I lived a happy life. A happy life is nothing but a series of happy moments. But so many people are busy waiting for that happy life to have the happy moments. They think they have to have the happy life before they can have the happy moments. It's absolutely the opposite way around. It's not have, do, be. It is be, then you do, which causes you to have. So absolutely opposite paradigm of what we've been taught. And so anyways, after the second experience, about 8 months later, I think, I was back in the hospital for a few days because I had abscesses in the cavity that was left by my gallbladder. and they had to drain him and some other things. And I won't say I was out. I was anesthetized. So it's possible I could have had another near-death experience, but I don't remember an experience. What I remember was waking up on the 12th floor of Inova Fairfax Hospital, looking down and watching the cars like little platelets driving down the road and stopping at traffic lights like little heart valves were opening and closing and controlling the flow of my veins. And all the people who were bringing things into the hospital and taking things away from the hospital, all so that I could sit there and be so blessed and healthy and happy and have everything I need. And I watched all this working. And all of a sudden, I realized I was looking through Hugh's eyes at the world. I was looking at it from that 30,000 foot. This is me. This is all me. And I say, I don't call it a near-death experience because I actually think I may have died. There may yet be a dimension of reality where they mourned my death and buried me because I have not come back from that state. And if I were to die, knowing how it works, I would have simply stepped out of the dream back into my everyday life. It would have felt normal like any other day. I would have been with the same souls that I'm sharing my experiences with here because their higher self's still there too. And we're as connected there as we are here. So I'd go into the living room. There would be my husband, my friends, and I'd do what I do on any other eternal day. And it would seem like nothing had happened. Well, here I am sitting on my porch, same body, same life. And yet now I'm saying, I think I might have died because I'm in heaven right now. So to go from the same spot, surely I'm in hell because this is it, to surely I'm in heaven. Oh, and the first time I said, and God, I am not coming back here. I'm going to get it right this time because you can't make me do this again. That was back when I thought that, you had to earn your way out. Now I'm sitting here thinking, and God, I can't wait to get back there because I'm going to start working from the other side on making us a telepathic species, which is the next step in our evolution. That's in the secrets too. I'm gonna dedicate myself to seeing that we become telepathic as quickly as possible, and I'm not coming back till we do. So I'm already planning my next life, planning what I want it to be like. Do I want to be born to rich parents this time? Nice, but no, learn some things along the way. It doesn't have to be. So already thinking about coming back again, and what a transformation. Kill me now to can't wait to come back again.
Let's plan another time for your mysteries and secrets of the universe.
We'll do that.
I could
We'll
talk
do
to you
that
forever.
And
you're fascinating. I'm gonna have to listen to this 10 times.
I've been taking notes, pages.
Get all the wisdom and knowledge that you share. I was just thinking of gratitude and how grateful I am for you today and relationships and connections and just your being so vulnerable and open and sharing your journey, and truly in a place of gratitude for you.
Well, it really is a pleasure. You can tell I enjoy talking to people about this. Because really, what I'm after is, and one of the reasons I do this is I spent good 15 years I still kept my job, but there was nothing more important than this. The minute I got out of my day work, I was, reading, researching, going to conferences and that kind of thing. And it took a lot of wading and weeding through it. And it took the help of my true dart, knowing this is something you need to pay more attention to or go further with, or, lock in on this one. This is a truth. And I just don't want everybody else to have to take as long to do it, Give me 6 to 8 weeks and you can be this happy too.
I'm in. Sign me up. Catherine just got her Akashic records yesterday.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It was a powerful experience, but everything that you're saying today is just, and that's why I think I'm just taking it all in here. I'm taking it like it's just all lining up with the messages I was given yesterday. All that
fun.
Yeah, and just this journey that I've been on. I'm so grateful too for you joining us and for that day to stumble on into your property on the art tour. Just like, let's go to this place.
And that was spirit saying, okay, take it one more step.
Yeah, I'm just so grateful for that connection.
And I'm happy to come and do this again.
Yeah, definitely.
Take a second shot at it and I'll dive. It's really just a deeper dive at this point.
Yeah.
Because I've told you the stories of the experiences and kind of led you along, but there's a lot more to, you said the 3 takeaways. Well, really I could make each of those 3 takeaways a topic of its own.
Yeah.
Because I can explain them pretty thoroughly to you, to the point where, like you said, it all starts to, at some point things start to come together and the puzzle pieces come together and you start to see the picture. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it, which is wonderful.
If somebody wanted to seek that metaphysical mentoring or that mentoring, like you said, I'll take you in 6 to 8 weeks, show you.
I'll take you wherever you are and get you there.
Yes. Okay. So what would someone do to reach out to start that? And what would that look like, that process?
Well, probably the first thing I would want to do is, before you even get here, I would do your natal chart, because that gives me a lot of information to work with right there before you've even spoken.
Your
I
natal chart?
typically,
Like human
natal chart,
design?
your birth chart, your astrological birth chart.
Okay, gotcha.
They are so powerful. Now that I understand astrology, I can see and know a lot. It just gives me a great place to start with you.
That's what we were going to give you for Father's Day. A whole.
Oh, well, now you know where to get it.
Yeah, but we talked ourselves out of it. So now maybe that'll be.
Oh, it'll blow your mind when you get yours. It'll blow your mind and say, oh my God, there's something to this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would probably be the first thing. Probably one of my, of course, I've got a whole list of tools to use, between channeling and psychic abilities and Reiki. And of course, my Reiki I'm not a master Reiki teacher, because I learned Reiki because that is the traditional way healing is delivered. Most people recognize it, but really I mostly fall back on my Christian Science upbringing, which is mind over matter. Don't necessarily need the hands-on, but they're helpful because electromagnetic energy is carrying that other energy. And probably if I have access to a consciousness that maybe you don't, then the way it's going to get from me to you, other than words, is going to be through the electromagnetic energy that touch gives me, or at least proximity. You can't see my hands down here, can you? Let them touch, at least proximity. So my tuning forks are probably my favorite tool, though, because they work with vibration, and it doesn't matter if it's the electromagnetic vibration or the consciousness vibration, because they're riding the same wave and they're behaving the same way, except for one key component. Electromagnetic energy, opposites attract. Chi energy attracts like. That's your law of attraction. Like attracts like. Vibration you put out is the vibration that comes back. So, God, we're going to get into, no, I will not get into the secrets of the universe. But basically, your body doesn't stop at your skin. Your energy field, photons are emitted. You have an energy field that extends for several feet beyond your body. We call that your biofield. It has effect on your physical body from that distance. Okay, it's all working together with your physical body. So that's the energy field, your energy field, as it influences your body. Of course, we know consciousness extends through eternity. But what this is able to do, the tuning forks, if they find a inharmony in the frequency as you're moving through your energy field, and you feel it, you sense it, you hear it, fork changes. It's just something changes in the tone of that fork. You've hit something. You just pause there, and it will unknot and bring that back into residency. And it's working at the same time. It's working on your biological field. It's also working on your consciousness field. So we're really working with both fields at the same time. So before I even work with you energetically, like with Reiki or anything else, I'm going to give you a quick tuning session and get all the knots out. Why pour energy into something that's got a blockage in it, right? That energy is not going to go where it needs to go or do what it needs to do. So the first thing I do is get the knots out. But then in subsequent visits, if I keep seeing those knots come back, we're going to start to look at why you're putting them back there. Because some of them may be old childhood trauma that you just haven't cleared yet. But if it keeps coming back, then we've got something to work on. And that's where my medical intuition, which is not you come through the door and I know what's physically wrong with you, because the physical problem is just a manifestation of the spiritual or the consciousness, the conscious belief that is causing that knot in your field. And so if I see that knot come back 2 or 3 trips in a row, we're going to start to look at why. And I know the map of the body. I've got a full solfeggio set of forks. So I can tell you, I know which chakra is giving me that knot. So we can kind of work through a little of this, little of that, and until all of a sudden you say, Eureka, oh, I remember this time. And oh my God, it was terrible. Recontextualize it. You say, oh, I look at it now. And I don't know why I got so upset back then, but I see the reason for it now, which is usually what happens, right? We see the reason later and we say, oh, okay, that's all good. And we forgive and we forget and we go on our way. Well, we can kind of help uncover those things because there's no sense in healing the manifestation of your dis-ease. It's just going to come back somewhere else if we don't get to the spiritual root of the problem. And that's where my intuition has served me really well over the years. I can usually pinpoint it and find it and help you recontextualize it. And then not only does the problem you came to me with go away, but a bunch of other things start to fix themselves too. It's fun to watch the cascade effect. So that's kind of what it looked like, but I'll meet you anywhere you are, and a lot of times we just talk for a while. I might do a tuning session. I might do a Reiki session. I mean, it's kind of whatever you need at that time until you get that. You have that moment where you look at me and you say, oh, I get it. Now you're ready to go teach it.
Awesome.
Because it's one thing to be told something to the point where you memorize it. It's another thing to understand it so conceptually that you own it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've definitely experienced that with even the therapy we do in our work. I tell people and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. But to do it and to practice it and become how you just communicate and work is a long transformation.
Well, and law of attraction, as simple as it is, as easy as it is, you get the law of attraction. It's like, okay, that's it. Yeah. Yes, but applying it is the difficult part. Overcoming evidence of the material realm and switching it around is the difficult part. And that's what they call the veil. The veil is our mortal senses keeping us focused inside the box. Your death experience takes you outside of the box. My husband, when I met him, it was November 21st, 2012. And he didn't know anything about all this new age stuff. And he said, if there's anything he says, what could possibly happen in 1 month that could bring about the golden age? And I said, well, for one thing, if there was a solar flare and everybody's heart stopped for a few seconds and they all had near-death experiences, the world would change overnight. But that's not the organic way to do it. And that's not the way Hugh says it's going to happen. So the organic way is, we're evolving into it. And telepathy is the next step in our evolution. That is the definition of unity consciousness. So for this unity consciousness era to occur, we must become of one mind, which means we know each other's thoughts. But when you think, and everybody shrinks in horror when I say that, but get used to it, clean up your thoughts, because there are telepaths here right now, and I'm one of them. I know what you're thinking, what you're feeling. It starts with empathy. You've got to know what people are feeling first, and then you can move on into telepathy. But when you think about, if you knew the truth of what someone was thinking, the truth about their intentions, the truth about where they were last night, the truth about the quality of their product, whether they were gaslighting you or not. I mean, how many of us are just wishing we could know what's really true? The media's, you don't know what's true anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine the problems every time I think, every time I think about, oh, when's this world problem going to go away? I think, well, being telepathic would do it. It would be there would be no other way to live but for the highest good of all. And it is. And there are more and more of them being born every day. These savants that are coming in, 2-year-olds that can play the piano better than Mozart did, play Mozart better than Mozart did. I mean, you can't say we aren't evolving right here in front of our own very eyes. And it is the logical next step. And it is already happening.
And technology, Neuralink is, that's not that far away. And that's artificial. Right. But
it's a perfect example, and it's an example of what we've done historically, which is we reflect in our art where we are going in our evolution. And so you look at the World Wide Web and you say, okay, we've just linked everybody's thoughts together and made them available to everybody instantaneously. Isn't that kind of what telepathy is? Yeah. And it's posing its problems. We're having to clean up our thoughts, which is a requirement for being one of these instant manifestors. You can't afford to think a bad thought for a few minutes, or that flower pot's coming down on your head. There was a country song, I'll pray for you, and it was something about flower pot falling on your head. Yeah. So, you can, it's all just so logical. It's all happening. But can you imagine? It just wouldn't be an issue once we have telepathic children being born to telepathic parents. It'll be the greatest Mandela effect of all. It's always been this way. And nobody will say, oh, I can't have somebody reading my thoughts.
Yeah, you're exposed. You're left without your ego. It's just you.
Yeah, there's only one of us here. Yeah. That's the beauty of it. You once you figure that out, you take these nesting dolls and you extrapolate them, you say, there's really only one consciousness, only one. Think about it, hall of mirrors. You light one candle and put yourself in a round room that's all mirror. You light one candle, That room will be so bright from all the candles reflecting off of all of the mirrors. First of all, you wouldn't be able to see. It'd be too bright. But how many candles are in the room? Only one. It's that way with consciousness. So when you think about it, my friend, that is God peeking out from behind your eyes. That is God listening to that lullaby. That's God watching that sunset. That's God loving the taste of chocolate. And it's God guiding through you, as you. If consciousness is an energy, then God is a verb.
I think we're going to leave that one there.
Yeah, that's a
love
good way to
it.
close,
I
isn't
love
it?
I'm
And
excited to talk more.
on that note, the word namaste defined means the divine in me sees the divine in you. And so with that, I will wish you a namaste. Have a namaste. I tell that to people. I say that as I leave people. Have a namaste. And they're like,
I was just showing that to my daughter, and your email said namaste, and I was like, oh, it's namaste, but with the day, it's cute. I like it. Salutation. We'll be in touch, Deb. Let's talk soon. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
This is incredible. This is.
I look forward to talking to you again because I'm really dying to tell you the secrets of the universe.
I'm
I'm
That's-
dying to know. We're gonna look at our schedules.
I mean, this was just an introduction. Now you wanted to know, how could that be possible? And I'll tell you.
Yeah, I love it.
Because I can now
It's a
articulate
master
it.
class with Deb. I love it.
Yeah.
That's our hook.
Yes.
All right.
There you
Thanks so
go.
much.
You're welcome and thank you for having me. Stay blessed.